All right, good evening. So this is Matthew Ashdown, and I am here tonight to introduce folks or reintroduce folks or, well, those are the two main things, to the gene keys. And you can see on my other side, this side, my hologenetic profile. And hopefully you've gone to the website, genekeys.com, and you've printed off your own hologenetic profile. If not, go to the link that's in the top, in the right up above. Go to that link, fill in your details, and you can generate something like this pretty darn quickly. And it'll just make more sense as we've got it here working through it, but it'll also be good to refer to mine throughout the process. And so I laid all my life out on the open there for you. So first and foremost, who am I? Well, I'm Matthew Ashdown. Grail Quest Coaching is my business, my work in the world, and about 5 or 6 years ago, on my own yoga practice, deep meditation, personal Grail quest, I stumbled upon this book, this work called The Gene Keys, and it was actually introduced to me synchronistically through a couple of people at the same time, and it's been a very helpful tool along the journey of helping me to reconnect to my own true nature. Instead of forcing myself to become something that really I'm not, it's helping me to understand my own true essence, my own true nature. And so that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this with others. So having been on this journey for 5 years with the support of others in the community and in one-on-one situations, and also through the meetups that I work with each month here in my little house, we get to really dive deeper into this journey of the Gene Keys. And so I know a lot of you have heard about the Gene Keys either through myself or my wife, Nicole Powell, or somebody else that you've come in and met along the way. And you might be wondering what it's all about, because I do hear from a lot of folks, they download their profile, they see this lovely thing sitting before them, but they don't really know what it means. And as you can tell, it really does come from your birth time, your birth date, your birth location. Those are all factors that have an effect on the profile here. So a lot of what we see here as a result of the alignment of planets at the time of your birth. And we could get into where each of the different circles you see there is aligned with different planets, but that's going to be beyond the scope of this. But understand that there is an astrological influence on this work. Now, where it's not work that's going to be predicting where your life is going to go or what you should be doing for a job or who you should be marrying or anything like that. This is really about your own personal journey, and along the way, as you step into the gifts, which I'll outline in here in a moment, this is really about bringing your unique gifts into the world. That was the big help that it was for me. That's the big help that it is for everybody who gets to work with this. It is very much a process for those who are willing to take accountability for their own nature. And that means accountability for the shadow nature. Those are the parts of yourself that you not necessarily comfortable with sharing with the world, and looking at those from a perspective of allowing the gifts to come through. And if that doesn't make sense to you right now, it's going to become clearer as we go through it. But if we think of shadow as the low frequency aspects of ourselves that we may not even be aware of, hence them being in the shadow, right? It's like we don't know what these shadow aspects are. And what's even more illuminating about this process is we start to realize that out of it, there is these gifts that arise. And so really, this is a journey for those who are ready to really take accountability for who they become in this life. Because this is not fixed, okay? This speaks to what your potential is, who you could become in this life, but it's not a guarantee, right? It's very dynamic. It's a very dynamic process. And this relates to the work of Grail Quest coaching. I've long been fascinated by the stories of the Grail Quests, the myth of the Grail Quests. And one of the things that Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, said is that everybody enters at the same place in the forest, meaning We come into this world the same way. And we traverse it by listening to our own intuition and forging new paths. We don't create a unique and new version of ourselves by doing what everybody else has done. And if you look at this profile, it looks like it's just a straight pathway. Okay, and I'll show you the pathway in a minute. But it looks like it's a straight pathway from one location to the other. And what you'll find as you dive into it, if you decide to dive into this further, is that it really is a journey of your own choosing. Okay? There's no teachers of the gene key. I'm not a teacher of the gene key. I'm a guide, somebody who's walked my path through the gene keys and has an understanding of it that I can share with you. But it's going to be through your own contemplation, through your own self-awareness, that you're really going to benefit from the work of the gene keys. And so two people could have the very same profile. They could have all the same numbers in all the same places and yet live very different lives. One could be coming from the shadow in certain areas of their life, and the other could be coming more from the gift frequency. Some, the enlightened ones, those who have truly been walking a spiritual path for a long time, could even be coming from the highest frequency, the siddhi. And again, I'm going to explain each of those in a moment so you'll understand what the heck I'm talking about. So this brings in all of what I've just been saying, and it also relates to the I Ching of Eastern philosophy. And so there are hexagrams of the I Ching that are built into the system. The gene keys is actually, it's an extension of an earlier piece of work called human design. So folks who are familiar with human design sort of have a head start in understanding this whole process, and yet it's very different as well. So really come at this with an open mind and a willingness to explore and to dive in, because this journey has, for me, it's really freed me up to be who I came here to be. It's helped me see aspects of myself that are gifts that I didn't even realize were gifts. You know, a lot of times when folks do this, and I work with them, I do private readings as well, or consultations, and when I do consultations with people and help them understand this, they start to see these gifts in their gene keys, and they ask, well, doesn't everybody have this gift? And really, no, not everybody has each and every gift. And you're here to express that gift in a very unique way. It could be through your voice. It could be through art. It could be for music. There's so many different ways that it can express. That's what makes all of this so juicy. So there's no set destination from this. But what I can tell you is that those who are following this and diving into this and diving deeper within their nature are really getting a truer understanding of who they are and understanding where they fit into the bigger picture. And it's by looking at this profile from the perspective of the individual gene keys, but then also through the connectivity of all of them, right? So let's start at the very top here, and we'll use my particular gene key at the top there. So you see at the very top of my gene keys, it says 2.5, and it says life's work. So straight off the bat, all of these profiles, whether it's yours, your best friends, your parents, your daughters, your kids, whoever it is, the words and the circles are in the same spot on every profile. What's different is the number inside of the profile. So here we're looking at the number, it says 2.5. So what we're looking at here is you're looking at the second gene key, okay? And above this, the life's work there, you'll see that there's three words: dislocation, orientation, and unity. And these are the aspects, the frequencies of the second gene key, with dislocation being the shadow of that. And the gift is the orientation. So the gift is what we become as we begin to own the shadow aspects of ourselves and also begin to recognize the gift qualities. And so the work comes through by contemplation on the words. And thankfully, there's a little bit of a guidebook to help us out through the process. So this here is the gene keys. Where is it? Right there. Getting used to the mirrored thing. This is the gene keys, and it's by Richard Rudd. And it's a nice thick book. lots of pages, and throughout the book, you will find references to different gene keys. So, for instance, that's the 8th gene key. We page through there, and it dives into a contemplation, Richard Rudd's contemplation and transmission of the 8th gene key. For you, you can look at that, you can read the particular gene key, and you can contemplate it at each of these levels. You can start to see if you see aspects of the shadow. So in this situation, for me, the shadow is dislocation. And dislocation has a lot to do with just being totally, well, for me, it had a lot to do with being lost in the world, not having a connection to my higher self, not having a connection to God, spirit, whatever it is you call it. That's the beauty of this system too, is it doesn't matter what your religion, what your faith, this can really play along with it all. And it's finding the fit for you. And so, yeah, dislocation, that was me being lost. That was me not knowing which way I was going in the world, being disconnected and just focusing on the material things of life because I didn't have that deeper spiritual connection. And then as I became aware of that, as I accepted that part of myself, I began to raise my frequency up into the gift of orientation. And so that's what happens as you will begin to contemplate these. So whatever your gene key that exists in your life's work, this is the first one that you would contemplate in what's called the golden path. And you would look at it, first and foremost, let's have a look at what resonates within each of those. Where do I see aspects of that? Because there's times you might be coming from the shadow, but other times you might be coming from the gift of this particular gene key. In certain areas of your life, like your work, you may have it down and you're coming from the gift, but in your relationships, you're coming from the shadow of that gene key. And so we can look at it through the lens of each of different areas of our life. And that's where there's real value in this. And you'll often find, well, there's crossovers, right? So if in our personal life, in our relationships, we're coming from the shadow, as we recognize and release or transmute, shift those to the higher frequencies of the gift, it has an effect on every area of our life. And so this is our conscious evolution. And so a big part of the shadow work is taking a look at it, and no matter how difficult it is to swallow, play with the possibility that in some areas, in some ways, that is a shadow that exists within you, and that you may or may not be unconsciously releasing that onto the world. Okay? And so first and foremost, it's allowing that possibility. Doesn't mean you accept it, but you allow that possibility. I've had this just recently, contemplating one of my gene keys in particular, and it was made very obvious to me, sometimes within my own awareness and thinking about it and contemplating it, and other times through the feedback from the world around me. So that's, we can get through feedback from the world around us, through our own inner awareness, through meditation. There's lots of different ways we can become aware of those sides of ourselves. And in time, as we come to accept that we have those shadow natures, that's how we begin to transmute it. That's how we begin to step into the gift. And as we step more into the gift through this conscious awareness, that just begins to strengthen in our life. And so the gift of orientation in my life's work is actually one of the 4 prime gifts that I carried into this life. The other 3 are the other ones that are in green circles. All right, they form part of what's called the activation path. And so with these as a strong foundation of awareness in your life can really help you through every area of your life. And so they are the best place to start. There is another aspect of each of these gene keys that you'll see too. And that at the top, so on the second gene key, is the word unity. And that is the Siddhi. This is the highest frequency, the highest essence of this particular gene key. And so, as we are making conscious effort towards the gift of orientation, or whatever that gift is for you in your life, as you're raising your frequency into that, you are moving from matter towards spirit. And at the same time, That's the process of evolution. And then there's the process of involution of spirit into matter. And it's where these pathways meet. As we contemplate and witness the cities, you may look at them and read them and be like, well, I don't see this at all in my life. But just the mere contemplation and the bringing them into your awareness is huge for the whole process with the gene keys. So we look at all three frequencies of these, looking to see where we recognize aspects of ourself within it. And then you'll see at the bottom of that, it says line 5 fixer. So the second gene key, it says 2.5 there. So that 0.5 represents that line number. So line 5 is the fixer. And so in that, I would contemplate, where am I playing the fixer in the highest possible way? And where might my shadow of dislocation be causing me to play the fixer in a less than constructive way, where I'm fixing as a form of codependent relationship? Whereas if I'm fixing and providing solutions, and sharing solutions, such as the gene keys is, right, then it's coming from that higher vibration of the orientation. And so you might have the line 2 like me, but maybe you've got a 2.2 or a 2.4. And so that line number adds some flavor to it. Now, what I should state from the very beginning is the book goes into each of the gene keys. It doesn't, however, go into the line numbers. To really understand the line numbers through each of the gene keys is where you would want to contemplate what's called the golden path. And the golden path is available on the website at genekeys.com. You can go through the golden path process. And the golden path is what I'm about to highlight to you here. Okay, so we've got each of these individual gene keys, and if you look at them, you could study each of those gene keys individually. And it might seem like you've got this disconnected bunch of gene keys that together don't mean much. The golden path begins to make a connection for each of us. And so it's when we do that that we begin to see how there's a unique story here weaving throughout this. In this one you see here, that's the story of me. That's the story of me and the shadows that I've worked through and probably continue to work through. And then there's the gift, the gifts that I bring to the world when I do so through conscious awareness. And again, sometimes those gifts are reflected back at me from others who see them, and sometimes I've had to come to them through my own awareness. Okay? And the golden path is the most efficient way to work through this profile. A big thing to keep in mind throughout the process, of course, is that this is your path. You're listening to your own innate guidance. If your intuition draws you to particular gene keys, then it may be worth contemplating there to an extent. But if you look at underneath the life's work there, you'll see the word pearl. And in mine it says 52.1, the pearl. Okay? And that pearl, directly beneath the life's work, the pearl, is kind of what happens. That's the prize, so to speak, at the end of it all, as we are working through the golden path profile. And if we were to dive straight for that pearl, we might find ourselves getting frustrated and bent out of shape because we're just not seeing it. We're not seeing the gift. We're not understanding how the shadow works in our life. And so definitely it is following the path from beginning to end in its spiral pattern in your life that's going to be the most rewarding and probably the most efficient way of doing this. And so if we go back to the top, we see life's work. That there, the top is the life's work at 2.5 there. If you follow that green arrow to the right on your profile or my profile, you'll see the word evolution. On mine, the evolution is 1.5. Entropy, freshness, beauty. Those are the three words associated with it. So that's the first gene key, and it's within the evolution. And that, in this, is the pathway of challenge. So some of my greatest challenges in life have come about as a result of not understanding or not diving in to an awareness around entropy and its meaning in my life. And as I've stepped into it, as I've been recognizing it, moving through that challenge, that new freshness and creativity comes out of that. So from that is your evolution. That's your second prime gift. From there, you jump right across to the left-hand side where you see radiance. This is your third prime gift. And then we jump right to the bottom where it says purpose. And there you'll see mine is 4.1. And so these are your 4 prime gifts that form the activation sequence, and they form a foundation for all of the work we do in our life. And so online, if you were to go to the Golden Path program, you would see that there's 3 different programs. The first one covers this, the activation path. And if you go to the website, you can actually do the first few steps of it without having to pay a dime. And the price of the course is very reasonable too. $64 is the cost of each of the 3 stages of the Golden Path, the other 2, which I'm going to go through in a minute. And each of those 3 stages is $64. And so that's a very reasonable price for the number of webinars. There's an ebook that comes with it. There's transcripts. There's so much content for you to work through. It is a very reasonable price. And $64, actually, that connects to the 64 genes that make up the gene keys. So that number 64 threads throughout. And so that's another thing to mention. The numbers that you see will be a number between 1 and 64 for the gene keys. And the line numbers will be a number between 1 and 6. All right. Whew. Take a deep breath in. Because, yeah, there's a lot to this. Don't expect you to remember it all in one shot. But again, if you rewatch this, this little webinar after we're done and work through it through your own, it will start to make a bit more sense. The second of the 3 pathways is what's called the Venus sequence. And this is a juicy one. They're all juicy, but this one's juicy in that it's how we are working with the relationships in our life. And so you can look to this one. It's the red circles. All right, starting at the purpose. The purpose at the bottom is half green and half red because that is part of the Venus sequence as well as part of the activation sequence. And we follow those red spheres up to where it says vocation, right? You follow the line, takes you up to the vocation. In the Venus sequence, that particular one is called the core. And so the core is where our core essence is. It's also where our core wounds lie. So there's deep work in there. There's deep work in all of this. And it's really interesting what can happen. What can happen as we do this, as we dive into this juicy stuff. So that's your Venus sequence, right? Our commitment to our relationships, working through them, recognizing our shadow, our contribution to when relationships aren't working out and when relationships are working out really well, taking personal accountability in that process. The third of the pathways, this is the Pearl sequence. And this is, a lot of folks are really interested in this one because this is where, what's our contribution to the world at large? How are we giving to the community? Where are we giving? How are we receiving? How are we blocking the flow of giving and receiving? This is really the culmination of the Grail quest, is that we step out into the world. Those gifts that we recognize from within us, we are sharing with others. We're here to share those gifts, whether people receive them or not. And as we do so, as we do this more and more throughout, we just find that we're diving really deep into the heart of this Pearl sequence. So those are the three. The 3 sequences are your activation sequence, your Venus sequence, and your Pearl sequence. And one of the things I would say right off the bat is don't rush this. Right? There's a tendency for people to want to go out and get the book, digest every one of their gene keys, and run off with it. Take the first gene key. All right? Take the first gene key. Look at that one. Start to become aware of how that one plays out in your life. Okay? And start to notice it. As you do the activation sequence and the golden path, you will start to understand how each of these different spheres, the sphere of life's work, evolution, radiance, purpose, how they all play out in your life, where they play out, associations with different cycles and stages within our life. Okay, so there's so much depth to them, so many cycles within all of this. And it does require patience throughout, is taking time to contemplate each one and not forcing the process. So picking up that life's work gene key, having a look through the book, contemplating it, beginning to notice it, being open to the feedback of others, whether it's welcomed or unwelcomed, and really settling into that, becoming aware of that. It's very powerful stuff, and it does take some time to bring that in. And you might journal, you might create music, there's so many different ways that we can express our creativity, because that ultimately, when we're coming from the gift frequency, that's how we're contributing to the world, the creativity we bring to the world. When we're coming from the acidic frequency, that's much more of a holding space for the world. So the gift frequency is where most of us are collectively moving towards with awareness into that frequency. And so trust the process and trust your own innate intuition to guide you through the process. As you start to recognize different aspects of your nature coming to the surface, take time to allow yourself to go in there, to experience it, to notice it, to see where it plays out. And through doing that, as you come to embrace the gift aspects more, notice and appreciate those in your life. Notice and see where you play those out. It's a very, very cool process when we take the time with it. There's a tendency for people to want to rush through this. And anything that's forced, whether it's creativity, creative works, or the gene keys, when it's forced, we fall out of rhythm. But as we allow the rhythm of this to play out for us, we can really make huge shifts in our life. All right? And so this gene key profile isn't going to tell you need to do this job or you need to do that certain thing. It will, if you are in a job, if you are in a relationship, it's going to call upon you to become the best possible version of yourself in that current job, even if it shifts over time. And in your relationships, it's calling you to become the best possible version of yourself. And so this process takes as long as we need it to. And for me, I've been working through it for 5 years and I'm feeling really called to share it with more and more people, hence this live stream and other services that I work with. But it is very much self-directed. There's material on the websites, there's free webinars, the community is freaking awesome around this. There are so many good people that I've met. Because of the nature of this work, you probably won't find too much in the way of judgment from others. It's a very safe community, a safe space to express yourself and to reveal yourself too. So that's why I'm super passionate about it. So just in ending this short webinar tonight, my hope is that you've got a little bit more of an understanding of what this process looks like. Okay? Begin to start to dive into it, but don't dive right for that pearl, because you might end up feeling more lost than you did going into this. And it might be a lot of information and a lot of confusion at first and overwhelm even. And just remember to breathe into that. Breath is really important throughout all of this. So if you're feeling that overwhelm right now, just take a breath. Really center on your heart space, and instead of our shallow stress breathing, just become aware. Where am I feeling the stress? Is it the overwhelm? Is it the desire to move forward quickly? Perhaps as you sit there, you suddenly have a realization about one of the gene keys at this moment. So just breathing into it. All right? And it's helpful for me too, because I've just been sharing so much information here. So that's the gene keys. That's how to get it going. And there will be questions you have along the way. There are support groups. once a week, there are free calls through the Gene Key Society Network. I host meetups here at my home in Mill Bay, British Columbia, once a month, possibly more in the coming months. And also consultations, one-on-one consultations. And in those, we look at this profile, we look at it in your life, we look to where you're at now, and we dive pretty deep into it. And it can really activate new awareness for you. And these are, what's important to remember about this is that I'm helping you to understand it, and it is ultimately your own contemplation that is going to help you to fully understand it as your self-awareness increases through the process. So do leave any comments below. I will do my best to answer them. This video is going to be up here for a while. And ask any questions, and if you need any particular resources, let me know. You've got my Facebook page, you've got a way to message me there, and I just love sharing this work with others. And if it's not me that you work with, there's a great network of people that I can recommend who you might connect to within British Columbia and within the world. So thanks for listening tonight. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you more in the world of Gene Keys and answering any questions you might have. All right. Thanks so much.